Good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday, August 10. It's the August meeting of August. It's the August public meeting of the Gungahlin Community Council, and welcome. My name is Peter Alford. I'm the president of the Gungahlin Community Council, and I'm glad to have you all joining us either on Zoom or on Facebook. As usual, if everyone can just remain muted until they're speaking, that'd be great. If you have a question, please raise your hand and pick that up. And hopefully one of my colleagues in the Community Council can also keep an eye on the Facebook feed to see if we've got any questions coming through there. This evening, we have, as usual, a packed agenda of good stuff. To be more specific, we've got 3 speakers this evening. A quick reminder before we get onto that, that we are being not only live streamed on Facebook Live, but a recording of this meeting will be taken and retained on Facebook as well. I'll give a short update on some of the things that have come across the Community Council's desk since our last meeting, and that have also happened outside what the Community Council's been doing. And then we have 3 really relevant and very specific speakers to touch on topics that I will flag in the GCC update, but will give a bit more depth in their presentations. So we have an update on the indicative land lease program and other projects the SLA are undertaking. David Jeffrey is joining us from ACT Sport and Rec to talk about the Gungahlin Tennis Facility in Amaroo. And Elizabeth Judd from Judd Studio is talking about the consultancy they're undertaking to undertake a functional brief and feasibility study for the new Gungahlin Community Centre. So thank you all for joining us. So just to push on with the update from the GCC. The first one is our monthly reminder that the Gungahlin Gungahlin Festival will be soon be upon us. It's on over a 2-week period in October, Saturday the 8th to the 22nd. And as probably everyone in Gungahlin knows, it's a joint activity of Gungahlin Arts, Belconnen Arts, who run the arts program for Gungahlin, Communities at Work, all sides community services. There's still time to get involved. The website is www.celebrategungahlin.com.au, and there's lots of opportunities to get engaged. Hopefully my internet connection is holding up. So I guess the big news since in the last few weeks has been the announcement of the ACT budget. The budget was announced on the 8th of August last week. And I guess from a Gungahlin point of view, and this is very much a Gungahlin perspective, the key announcements were relating to mostly schools. The announcement of a second college. Various press articles have suggested that might be located over near the Gold Creek High School. Haven't heard that confirmed by the Education Directorate, and maybe the SLA might be able to throw some light on that. Some substantive expansions to the Margaret Henry School, which will be completed by 2023 to support a total school community of 600, and an announcement of funding to support the design of a new high school in Taylor to be opened in 2024 for 800 students. There's also substantial funding in the budget to start construction of the Gungahlin Tennis Facility in Amaroo, and Dave Jeffrey from Sport and Rec will talk about that a little later. And some funding to improve mental health services in Gungahlin through the Childhood Early Intervention Program delivered out of the Child and Family Centre, but that won't happen until 2023-24. There's been an announcement of some investment in health services on the north side. That's through a range of programs, and we see the details of that, but I'll come back to that point. And there's also been some funding allocated to further work in Yerrabee Pond, mostly designing and scoping, as I understand it. Hopefully Darren or one of the other members of the Friends of Yerrabee might be able to provide an update. And I guess the other notable thing from a Gungahlin point of view was that there was no funding to start construction of the home of football this financial year, which means it's delayed until next financial year. Maybe Dave can pass a comment on that as well. The other part of what happens in the budget is the ACT government publishes their indicative land release program. And I'm going to try and not steal too much thunder from Andrew Griffith's update shortly, but the quick summary is that there are 2 blocks up for sale in the next financial year. In this financial year. A community block adjacent to the proposed linear park over on the right-hand side of this picture, and a mixed-use site that is across the road from the Gungahlin, across the road from the McDonald's in the town centre. And we'll talk a bit more about that when Andrew speaks. The other key items I've extracted out of the indicative land release program are that the first homes in Jacker, phase 2, are likely to be available allegedly this financial year. It remains to be seen how quickly that those sites can be serviced. But the suburb of Kenny still is a little way out. Initial sites not arriving until 24-25. And the last one that we've done some advocacy around is the 2 CZ1 zoned but containing lots of community use sites in Casey opposite the current Casey Group Centre. They're scheduled to go up for sale next financial year, so after July next year. And the last bit in italics here on this slide is a quote out of the indicative land release program, which talks about the importance of the community and recreation facilities assessment, which we mentioned last meeting, and flags that it will be a major source of data for improving community and recreation. Excuse me, facilities across Gungahlin. Such a COVID-safe sniff that was too. And as we'll hear a little bit more about later, there are further conversations that we had with the community about facilities in the district, including the proposed community centre and the Gungahlin Town Centre. And both of our speakers later on will touch on that as well. The other thing that was announced just last week is a tender by out of the Planning Directorate seeking a new master plan for EPIC, the Exhibition Park in Canberra. And you can see the area that is subject to this consultation. But I guess the key things out of it is that they're looking to carve off a small amount of, well, it's actually a large portion of land, but a relatively smaller portion of the land available to take it out of the light industrial non-retail use and probably go into some sort of residential use. But there will also be a 10,000 square metre facility to replace the current exhibition building designed to hold large-scale events. And this was one of the things that was committed to in the ACT election. But there's a long list of new and revised things, new on-site maintenance facilities, revisions to the dogs ACT facility, changes to stabling, additional green space, new car parks, changes to support Summernats, one of the anchor tenants at the site, new entry near the light rail stop, and a consolidation of the multiple blocks into a single site. So it'll be interesting to see how that consultancy expands over time. And just quickly on other things we've been involved at, we're busy putting together the next issue of Gunsmoke, which we hope to have out in sort of the late September, early October timeframe. So look out for that in the newsstands. Since our last meeting, the GCC lodged a representation around a development application proposed for the Emerald Group Centre. What was proposed was a 3-storey medical centre, which is great because healthcare is important. But based on the size of that facility, the planning rules say that you should provide for 84 car spaces, but the actual proposal has just 7 car spaces and suggests that anyone planning to use that medical centre could park in one of the car parks under the supermarkets in that area. And we don't think that's a very clever idea. The reason those planning rules are in there is to stop, proponents saying we'll use someone else's car park. So we've asked that that be reconsidered in that development application. As mentioned in previous meetings, been working with Minister Steele and then the Transport Canberra City Services Directorate to set up a regular meeting to discuss basis so that we improve the information flow between TCCS and the community. And that first meeting is set up for late August now, so that's good news. And in other good news, the NBN have confirmed that the reason that there are NBN trucks in Casey is that they are undertaking the field validation process prior to, which if is successful, will lead to the Casey Stage 1 area being upgraded from fibre to the node to fibre to the premise, which has been a pretty hot topic of discussion on the Casey Facebook mailing list. And the last item I just want to mention, this is very recent, as of Monday, the Health Directorate have approached the Community Council regarding those investments in Northside Health Services, including the Northside Hospital, the Northside Clinical Services Plan and integrated care solutions for the community. And this is off the back of the GCC meeting with the Minister for Health in May. The Health Director, we suggested to the Health Directorate that they come along in September and outline what their thinking is in that area and give the community an opportunity to speak to that. So they're the major items. I guess I'll pause briefly here in case there are any questions from everybody. Looking for people to raise their hand or pop something in the chat window if anyone has any questions. No, traveling well. It's good to hear. All right. Well, if that's the case, then I might just ask Andrew and Nicole to prepare themselves and share their screen if they have some slides to share, and provide an update on the indicative land release program and other projects the SLA are leading in the Gungahlin region. So, Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. I'll just deal with the first challenge of getting the screen up. Hopefully that works relatively easily.
We can only hope.
So hopefully we've got something up on the screen now.
Yeah.
Yep. Looks like a more detailed map of what I showed.
Excellent. So as you noted there, I've got Nicole Rogan with me as well today, and we also have Ian Woods, who is our development and design advisor in the background, who might jump in on particular slides. So as a land development agency, it's always a great place for us to start with acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of the lands and waters where we live and work, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So for those who don't know a little bit about the SLA, our aspiration is towards creating great places where communities thrive. Now within that area, as Government's Land Development Agency, we try to deal with balancing social, economic and environmental benefits for all Canberrans. So that includes elements such as affordable living, safe and healthy population, social inclusion and diversity, housing choice and environmental sustainability, amongst other items. But tonight we've got about 3 sections for our presentation. I think it's going to be most efficient for us to run through all 3 sections and then take questions at the end. Certainly happy to expand on anything, but we'll try to keep it relatively sharp and focused given the packed agenda for tonight. So those 3 items are an update on the Gungahlin Town Centre, or specifically the placemaking engagement we've got proposed over the next 6 months, an update on the Moncrief and Taylor shops, and wrapping up with a land release update. Now, focus that land release update on 22-23, but we might touch on some of the outlying years. So just quickly, the map on the right, the red line basically indicates the extent of the precinct placemaking that SLA is committed to. It's not a hard line. We'll definitely be looking at what's happened in the town centre outside of this as we start to jump into our placemaking engagement. The icons on the blocks show the blocks that are within SLA custodianship, and the green area is indicative of the linear park. Now, we think we'll play around with those boundaries, but that's just a good indication of a pretty substantial urban open space. Again, it doesn't give much scale to what's left in the Gungahlin town centre from that map, but it is a pretty massive scale with some of these blocks well over a hectare. So there might be opportunity to subdivide, but we'll talk on that a little bit later. So just quickly, precinct scale placemaking engagement is underway, and we'll be expecting to commence our public facing activity shortly. As part of that, we've established a community panel, and we definitely thank the high amount of interest in that, and certainly those who've been put onto the panel for participating in that process. It won't be the only tool to engage, but it will be a really important tool for what we're about to talk on with our engagement program. And we're expecting the majority of engagement
Is it just me, or we lost Andrew?
I think we lost him.
I think we've lost him.
Okay, brother.
That's a shame. If I can bump him out, I can share my screen until he jumps back in, which might be the way to go, because I do have the slides available. So let's do that.
Okay.
I cannot share while another participant is sharing. Can you bump him out?
Possibly. Stop participant sharing. I've stopped him sharing.
There we go. All right. So if I go to that screen.
Andrew, if you can still hear us, you may want to try and fix your connection somehow and jump back into the meeting.
That's right. Can you see my screen that I'm sharing at the moment?
We can see your PowerPoint slides, and if you go into slideshow mode, with a bit of luck, we'll see your slides in slideshow mode.
Excellent. There we go, winning. All right. So I think the next one he was about to hand over to me anyway. So look, I can take over for a little bit until he can jump back in. So if I do jump out at all, please speak up, because I can't see my screen of people anymore.
Yep.
So as Andrew was just mentioning, we did go through the process of pulling together the community panel. We had a really overwhelming response to the community panel, which was really great. We had over 400 people registered to be part of the panel, which meant that we were very easily able to achieve our 100 people with a really good demographic split that represented the current census demographics for the area. The panel, as Andrew mentioned, won't be our only source of engagement, but it will be a really strong component of our engagement projects in the Gungahlin Town Centre. The panel will also be used by EPSDD for the Community Centre project, which I know that Elizabeth's going to talk a little bit on later. Where we're at with the panel at the moment is we have gone out to everyone who was successful and sent them an email to say so. And for those that unfortunately didn't make it onto the panel have also received an email. We will have opportunities for broader community engagement throughout the place. And if people do want to sign up to a project mailing list for this project so we can keep them up to date, please email us at SLA Engagement and we can add your name to a list there that was started to compile. We'll be getting back out in touch with community panel members that were selected very soon with details on how you can sign up to a Your Say page, which is how we'll be interacting with them. EPSDD's project will be first off the bank in pulling the panel together for some engagement. Our engagement on the town centre will be a little bit behind on that one, but coming very soon. So now is Andrew back at all? Hello?
We can hear you, Nicole.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Doing a great job, Nicole.
Oh, okay, it was more I couldn't hear anyone. I'm like, have I signed out? Can you still see the slides?
No.
Not now.
No. Okay. Failing with technology. Zoom, our computers don't like Zoom, unfortunately, so it does have hiccups. All right. Are we back again? All right. So, if I go through it out of presentation mode, is that clunky on your screen, or can you guys see it?
It's become smaller without a presentation mode. Yeah.
All right, let me make it bigger again, but that's where my computer does go a bit sideways. So look, the Gungahlin Town Centre, we've committed to a placemaking approach to our engagement there, and we're really excited about kicking off there. There'll be a number of stages to this engagement and to this process as well. We imagine that we'll be out engaging with you all for at least a good 6 months while we work through all these steps. But the first one is sort of pulling together some precinct benchmarks, some site analysis, and this is sort of where we're at the moment. We're in that step one at the moment. We're currently procuring some consultants that will come on board and start working with us soon, and we imagine we'll be ready to come back to you guys in the very near future with a bit more detail on what this engagement will look like. We're then going to work through developing the place principles and a place ambition, the place principles will move into what we'll call a place ambition, which is very similar to our place brief documents that we've done in other areas. At the same time, we'll be also working through a design and place framework, which will really start to articulate some of the elements in the area, and that will be that will be the fourth deliverable in this step. So at the end of it, we should have a document called a place ambition and a design and place framework that will guide all of our future releases for those sites. This is an indicative timeline of where we're looking at the moment. Some of our engagement that we're looking to do is we're really keen to get some thought leaders out and to run a bit of a thought leaders session in the next month or so that brings together some key people that have some good insights into urban renewal, projects in other areas, international and national, just to start looking at some of the opportunities and opening up our minds as to what we could look to do here. Following that, we'll look into starting some of the more traditional engagements that you would expect to develop some of our place principles. So we are looking at workshops with the panel. We are looking at stakeholder roundtables. We are looking at online engagement opportunities as well. And hopefully we will get to a place where we have a draft place ambition somewhere around October, November, where we finalise that. And we'll continue working through our place and design framework as well, looking to have that finished by the end of the year. So it's an ambitious timeline, but we're really keen to get going, and hopefully we'll be off the ground running in the next month. Now, this is where my ability to continue running this presentation goes a bit slower. So Ian, I might need you to jump in a little bit more of these, but I'll work through the first bits of these ones. And if Andrew is about, he can jump back in and I can work the slides. But it's not sounding like he is. All right.
Andrew hasn't rejoined.
That's okay. We will do our best. So look, as you're all aware, we went out last year talking about the Moncrieff and Taylor local centres and did some engagement. We also went through our first stage tender process, which is now complete, with the final stage, second stage, about to be released very soon. So thank you to all those who provided feedback on how they'd like to see these sites take shape. And we've got a few slides following this that kind of outline how we propose to address the feedback that we received during those, before we look to finalise the sale of these sites. So a lot of the feedback that we got, some of the key things was cafes. Cafes were a really important element that we got in our feedback. So we're looking at planning conditions and Crown lease will require a minimum area of commercial use. So trying to make sure that we really make sure that space is there for cafes. Parking should be prioritised was a key feedback point as well through our engagement. So we're looking at approximately 80 spaces of off-street car parking designed in sequence with the broader estate, and we're looking to make sure we integrate that into the bus and the broader active travel network as well. The other really key point we got out of our engagement was that green open spaces and recreational spaces need to really be considered and made a priority. So Tate Park Playground is directly opposite the site. The plaza entry feature will at the front of the local centre, and we're looking at really high quality landscape as we move through the provided car park as well. Jump in at any time with these slides moving forward, Ian, because you might know a little bit more about this. So some of the key proposed elements. So this, looking at it, would be Taylor. So there's a minimum 1,500 non-residential areas with permissible uses, including restaurants and shops. We're looking, the red line will show on the map around the local centre, shows the active frontage along the car park and the interface into it. So the car park's the yellow part that you're seeing here. Off-street car park for convenience access. We've got Tate Park across the road, so we know that green and open space is really important. So we'll make sure there's strong connections that connect across to that as well. And we've also made sure there's provisions for the bus stops and integration into active travel. Moncrief, again, strong cafes were really important, and a strong desire for a supermarket. Priority parking, both underground and open air. Green and open space again, and there was some concerns about traffic impacts from the nearby school. So some of the things we're looking to do is there's been a place and design framework that's been developed as evaluation baselines for the second stage of the tender. So we'll talk a bit more on that one next. And we're happy to also share that framework with you once it's complete. So it's just in its final stages now. In terms of traffic concerns, we're making sure that traffic impact assessments are done as part of the state development plan, and also that there'll be additional considerations through the DA process for that. So this Nicole, is where we start going into. Excellent. I was about to say, I really hope Ian can talk to these ones, because apart from me going, here's a pretty map.
Moncrief is actually a group centre. It's actually a larger centre than Taylor. So it actually will be anchored by a mainline supermarket. But not only that, we're trying to avoid the situation where it's just a supermarket in a car park. We're trying to ensure that it's actually responds to the issues and aspirations that were expressed during the consultation. And the key feedback the people really wanted to actually have a great place where people can come to meet, where they can have friends, where they can actually sit outdoor in a plaza, have coffee, or sit in an outdoor restaurant. There potentially could be child play, some green space, but also other commercial and community uses potentially. So the actual framework, there are actually two blocks that this draft design of place framework has been prepared to embrace. And the idea is to try and ensure that we get an integrated development across both sites. But the key element is actually a central green plaza or green square. And it's what you see here is quite a large public space. It's probably double the size of Green Square in Kingston, just to give you an idea of the scale of the space. And the idea is that it's actually framed by mixed use development. So ground floor shops, restaurants, cafes, first floor commercial, and resi, or could be commercial accommodation over. And we're also looking at trying to future-proof the provision and potentially of a future community building, and that's shown in the northern part of the space. So that's an idea at the moment. We haven't confirmed exactly the nature of that. We're just really ensure that we make provision for such a thing. So when we go into the key elements, so I've talked about the full-line supermarket. The idea also is to make sure we have good parking provision, but we're wanting to try and ensure that we don't reduce the amount of green space by having large surface car parks. So the idea is to try and put the parking underground. We're trying to avoid what we call heat sinks, where you actually get large areas of tarmac that actually creates a really uncomfortable microclimate. So we're future-proofing against future climate change. We're looking at an ability to navigate and to actually the multiple ways of getting around the centre, but potentially providing convenient sort of set down and drop off with the new east-west laneway. And we're also looking at ensuring that we actually have some diverse housing options, including affordable housing. Next slide, please.
So the next ones are some of the artist impressions. So we've got two artist impressions.
This is really a render that's been developed to show, and it's an accurate depiction of the plaza that we're proposing. So it's actually a 3D architectural model of the whole centre. And it shows the possibility for this plaza. And as you can tell, it's quite a large green space. There's an outdoor shaded place for children's play. And it actually has these buildings that front on with active ground floor users. Next slide. And then around the centre, this east-west lane really provides for more housing to address the lane and to provide a very efficient way to actually get through the site, but in a way that is civilised and slow moving, so the cars don't dominate the space. It's safe. There's on-street parking and lots of large-scale trees to shade the public domain. That's it.
Perfect, thanks, Ian. Now, the next part of our presentation was just to give...
Sorry, we got a question from the Facebook regards to the thing. So let me read that out for you. Just give me a sec. So this is from Mark Skockerberg. How will you ensure these shops don't have the same issues seen in Coombs? Example, no tenants.
Okay. Yeah. I can answer that if you like. The process that we're going through, and we've learned a lot from the Coombs experience, is that we're actually going through a two-stage tender process. The first stage of that is to vet developers to ensure that they've delivered projects of this scale and this complexity, and that they're able to deliver this project within a reasonable time frame. The second stage of the process, and this is what the draft design of place framework is about, is to actually create what we're calling like a reference design for the centre, and it forms a benchmark of what we expect the quality of the centre will be like. And the developers who are shortlisted in stage one will be required to submit development concepts for evaluation, and those concepts we will go through a process where we actually select the best proposal. So it's not unlike the Gold Creek scenario that you're aware of, Peter. So the idea is that we will that the developer, the concept they propose, they will be required to deliver that, and that they will be bound by what we're calling a concept delivery deed. So there will be very clear performance requirements around the delivery of what's actually proposed in the concept.
Thanks, Ian. Hopefully that answers the question. So moving on, the next part of our presentation was just going through the land release program for this year. So this is something we do around this time every year, just to highlight what's coming up for the area and where we're heading in terms of our workload. A lot of this we can go through quite quickly because Peter has already flagged some of it. But as he mentioned, we're focusing at the moment on this current financial year, the next 12 months. So there are some blocks in Gungahlin Town Centre. So those are, I've got another slide that shows a picture, which I'll get to. And we've got Jacka as well. So Jacka stage 2, that is. So the Gungahlin Town Centre, there's two sites that are up at the moment. One of them is one of 2228, which is the one that was flagged up opposite McDonald's. The other one is one of 249, which is the community use one, if I have them correct. Now, both of these, we are doing some extensive engagement over the next 6 months, and we do intend for that engagement to help inform these releases. The next one's Jacka Stage 2. So Jacka Stage 2, the development approval for the first stage of North Jacka is approximately 500 develops, and that's gone through now. It's anticipated that the estate will deliver approximately 700 new dwellings, and it will have a range of different housing choices in there and affordability as well. Jacka is going to be an all-electric suburb, and we are anticipating our first land releases in early 2023, and we are not far off looking at starting some civil works up there to prepare Jacka now that the DA has gone through. Kenny, the first releases for Kenny are indicatively scheduled in the 24-25 financial year. The new high school is currently under construction, which you know. There is currently a nature TPV 379 formalised the Kenny as a nature reserve supporting the outcomes of the Gungahlin strategic assessment, and strategic stakeholder engagement will form a really key component of us developing Kenny. So we haven't gotten there yet, and it's still a little way off, but we will come back to you and we will start engaging with you quite closely once we get closer to Kenny coming out of the ground. And that's where we end for the moment. Does anyone have any questions for us? And apologies for the
jumping in quickly. Thank you very much for taking over there, Nicole. I did seem to have I did a great presentation with nobody watching until I realised that I'd been kicked out of the meeting. But yes, sorry, apologies for the technical issues, and thanks again to Nicole because she hadn't had much chance to get visibility of those slides. But certainly, I'm happy to jump in with any questions of expanding out anything that was in there.
Great to have you back, Andrew.
Sure. So if anyone's got a question, please raise their hand so we can at least make this work.
Got a question from Facebook as well.
Okay. Kevin, we'll start with that.
In several of the other consultations, community groups often have observers. They're not participants, but they're observers and can come along to some of these sessions and see the sorts of things that are going on. Are you going to have observers in your consultation?
Look, we haven't gotten down to that finer detail yet, Kevin, in terms of the exact activities that we'll be running with the community panel and whether we'll have observers in those. I know we have in previous things that I've run and others we haven't. We still need to map that out when we bring our consultants on board that will work with us on that engagement. Just so you know as well, Kevin, we also intend to include a lot of stakeholders into our engagement, so the panel won't necessarily be a closed loop. We'll make sure that key stakeholders have a voice in those sessions as well and are present.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I had a question for Andrew about particularly Block 1, Section 228, which is a mixed use site. Obviously, the Community Council's been running a campaign, pretty concerned that the mixed-use sites are not delivering a good outcome for the town centre. Certainly the residential is valuable, but we're not seeing a corresponding increase in retail, quality retail, commercial, community or entertainment services. And we're still waiting the outcomes of the consultancy being run, the placemaking for East Gungahlin. How can we, what steps is the SLA going to take to be responsive to the campaign and address some of our concerns that, because we don't want yet another mixed-use development that looks ugly, has a whole bunch of micro tenancies on the ground floor that never get filled. So, what confidence can you give us that advocacy's been heard?
Yep. So sure, that's a great question, and that block in particular does have a few tight planning controls around it. So expectation is that it would be commercial for the first on the ground floor. It's got some active frontage on one particular street that requires certain types of uses. So that one's a little bit different to the mixed use sites that have come to more of that predominantly residential outcome. There is some hard-coded planning controls within this site to maintain the car parking. We're also expecting that the clause that was giving a little bit of grief on that 200 square metre tenancy should not apply to this block. So expectations is, and we'll make sure we get confidence on that before we release, that block wouldn't have the maximum tenancy of a particular shop limited to the 200. So it opens it up for larger commercial opportunities on, be that retail shopping, be that office or other elements like that. We've also definitely picked up on the Community Council's excellent advocacy in this space. So our expectation is that we're not intending to take this block out to market before we've wrapped the Gungahlin East engagement. Now, even though this block's not tied up within that, we do think it's quite important that dialogue with the community happens. And this, to a degree, still, as a large commercial site, has some interaction with what happens in that space, because it is a limited amount of land, and whatever happens on here can't happen over there, and likewise.
Yep.
So we'll try to commence that engagement there. We'll probably also have some localized engagement on this particular block when we start to mature our thoughts about what planning controls or what method we think that the site should take. So I do expect that we'll probably also, whether it's through the community panel or another forum, we'll probably expect to take that block and our thoughts on that one ahead of actually doing a release. Cabinet's also paid attention, so we do have a action with SLA to write a paper to Cabinet relating to our intention for the land releases in the town centre this financial year before we take land releases out. So there's also a need for us to inform up the line with Cabinet how we're balancing government's commitments and operations to future land releases in that space.
Well, that sounds interesting. Look, just stepping away from the town centre back to a perennial topic, and again, this is a question for Mark Scarborough. I think Henley was about to get this, but he's just flagged it with me directly. And this relates to the sites opposite the Casey Group Centre, and Mark points out that the Casey Concept Plan, which is the only document that describes what's going to happen in Casey, and it has since 2005, said that these sites will include a combined club, indoor pool, indoor sports gym and childcare centre, and there's been no formal correspondence around any changes to that. Can you give us any insight as to what's going on with these blocks? I note that they're in the FY 23-24 time period, but what conditions, what expectations are being attached to that around what use they going to have, and what level of community function or service is actually going to be included in those developments?
Sure. So unfortunately, I can't talk to that one in a lot of detail. I don't want to do the government siloed response, but it's not with the SLA just yet. There has been a commitment from, I believe, Minister Gentleman around future engagement to inform the release of that one. So we expect, as part of the process, for any elements that SLA will be involved in delivering, we'll take handover of those sites probably sometime this financial year, and that's when we'll start our forward-facing dialogue with the community. But we expect either before that or as part of that process that there will be further engagement with the community that talks to the intention for those sites, how government's planning to address things like expectations around community facilities with possible expectations around residential. So unfortunately, I can't give a lot more detail on the exact thinking on that site, other than government has committed to further engagement, and we expect that'll form an important component of bringing those sites to market.
Okay, sounds like it's time we reached out to the new planning advisor in Minister Gentleman's office to find out where that's at. Because last time we spoke to EPSDD, they said it was a decision for government. So, I don't know. Well, we'll work with that and see where we get to. Hopefully that progresses things with Mark. Are there any other questions from the
Yeah, I've got
crowd?
a couple of questions.
Sure, Henry.
Yeah, so with the Moncrief shops that we are looking at the moment, like how many shops we are thinking and what scale would that be? It's like, I know they mentioned about cafeteria and stuff, but what size, would it be like a Casey, or would it be like Warner, or?
Apologies, this was Moncrief, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a good benchmark would be the Amaroo Group Centre and the Casey Group Centre. That's about the scale of these type of ones. Amaroo a little bit smaller. So if you look at the scale of this one, it's probably Amaroo excluding maybe the Aldi type scale. So they're both pretty good arrangements. A little bit bigger than something like your Bonner or your Ford, but somewhat more comparable to the Casey Group Centre or the Amaroo Group Centre.
Okay, excellent. I've got another follow-up question. So now we got the shops and stuff. Now the Jack are going to be developed as well, stage 2. So what we've been seeing in the Auspark and previously, so we got the Moncrief, so we build the road, and then we, when we got the Taylor, we just again close the door, do the rework, again duplicate to double lane, and so it's been like an ongoing issue. So what is it? Are you guys going to work along with this, the road people, and make sure that, at the moment there's no consistency. So there's a dual lane, and then now it's it changes to single lane, and then so it's kind of on that road. It's like a nightmare. So I'm not sure what kind of cost. Have you considered planning with the the road people in terms of there's a Moncrief shop coming, and then in terms of the Jacker plan too as well?
So I understand that's probably mostly relating to the horse park interface and whatnot.
That's right.
Yes. So look, it is a great question, and we do have a pretty lengthy engagement process as part of the estate development plans. So when the estate development plan, which is the controlling document for an estate of that scale, goes through the process, it has to go through entity endorsement engagement. So we do deal with quite a lot with our TCCS colleagues in the traffic space, and then everybody in between, from open space, parks and gardens, planning conditions and elements like that. We've engaged a little bit of extra traffic assessment as part of the Moncrief Group Centre, just picking up on some of that community concern around the collective traffic impacts of the emerging school within that space, and a few other bits and pieces, the temple coming there. So we have engaged a little bit more traffic assessment, which will be used to inform the design and place framework about where access to that site comes off and how it functions. But look, it's always a good point. We do try to integrate with broader traffic planning as much as possible. Traffic is a very dynamic environment. I agree with you on greenfield estates. We shouldn't have traffic issues, but sometimes they do pop up from time to time. I'm hopeful that Moncrief wouldn't be a massive issue, because this group centre has been factored in from the very start of that estate within all the traffic assessment and engagement.
Okay, no worries. Because in the Casey now we got those big apartments coming in, so that road is really getting messy. So the last thing I want to see in Moncrief is got shops, but you can't go because of the the traffic there. So yeah,
and apologies that I wasn't in the room at the time, but within the design and place framework that we've developed up, traffic is quite an important part of that. So it really looks at things like where people will access the site, where they'll come out from the site, if there's basement car parking, which areas we want those accesses to come off.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, look, I'm sort of encouraged by the work going into the Moncrief Group Centre. It's, I guess, it's a pity that we haven't perhaps spent as much time looking and having as much engagement on some of the other group centres. But it certainly looks encouraging, and I note in the slides that it's likely that the framework that you're developing will be made available, and we'd certainly be pretty keen to see that as soon as it's ready to come out. So as soon as possible would be good.
Yeah, certainly happy to make that available. We're just working through a few finalities, and as you might imagine, we don't want to put something out there that we're not going to deliver on commitments. So it's just tweaking a few of the little notations and things like that within the framework that might be going into areas that we can't guarantee that we'll get a result on. So we would expect that we can probably make that framework available certainly before the tender goes out, but hopefully that will be in the next 4 to 6 weeks at the latest, I'd suspect.
All right, and just because we're doing a few of the perennial questions tonight, we do have a question on Facebook saying, what is the SLA doing about progressing the cinema development in the town centre? Look,
unfortunately, that one probably doesn't sit with SLA, so we haven't had custodianship of that site, and after it moves to a sale, so it is owned by a private lessee, it probably becomes more of a planning conditions element. So I'm certainly happy to pass that question on to our EPSDD colleagues, and I can take that one on notice and commit to get a response back if that will be helpful.
Any information about the cinema is always helpful, because extracting information about where it's at is difficult, and we understand that commercially the developer doesn't want to develop it because the current market and so on, but at the same time he bought that block with a lease condition which presumably said he was going to develop it sometime, and it'd be interesting to know what the government's policy on enforcing some of these lease conditions might be.
Yep, it is a good point. So usually within the leases you do have a start construction and a completion of construction. There is extension opportunities for developers within there for a number of reasons, but we can just chase that one up with EPSDD and commit to come back to you with a response. That'd be great, Andrew. All right, I think we're all done. I don't see any other further questions. So thank you for the update, guys. It's always interesting to hear what's going on, and it looks like you've got your work cut out for you in the next 12 months at least, and possibly for the next 24, with Jacko, Kenny, and the work in the town centre. All right, well, thank you for that. I think we now turn to the update on the tennis centre, and Dave Jeffrey from ACT Sport and Rec is the man in the hot seat, and I think we've got a few other interested players on the Zoom. So, David, over to you for an update on the Amaroo Gungahlin tennis facility.
Thanks, Peter. Hopefully my screen is starting to share.
Yes, sir.
Start from the beginning. Thanks for the opportunity to obviously present on this exciting project. As you noted, Kim Cashel is also on the meeting tonight. So Kim's the CEO of Tennis ACT. So obviously is part of our project control group, and obviously very keen, interested party in the delivery of this project. So we're working closely with Kim and also his colleagues in Tennis Australia that will help take this project through from its current phase into construction, and then Tennis ACT will then have the active role in operating the facility once it's constructed. So yeah, once again, thank you. I'll just run through some slides, and then obviously happy to take questions at the end. First of all, in terms of, to provide a bit of context in terms of the proposed site, for those that aren't aware, this just shows essentially the proposed location. It's essentially just north of the Amaroo district playing fields. So
David,
yes.
Yeah, can you put yourself in slideshow mode?
Yes, certainly. Slideshow. Is that better?
You obviously got a second screen in, so you're in presenter mode, and unfortunately we're seeing the yeah. Yeah, there we go. Swap presenter view and slideshow. That's what you want.
There we go.
And wait for it. Oh, you've made the screen black, so you need to type a B on the screen. And there you go. Fantastic.
Beautiful. All right, excellent. All right, sorry. Hopefully that's now a little bit better. Yeah, so that shows the identified site just north of the Amaroo District playing fields. That was a site that was under early investigation when we did a bit of a mapping exercise early once Tennis ACT came to us about planning for a future facility to find potential sites. So that was the site identified as part of the election commitment that Labor went out with in the 2020 election. That's just an aerial shot that shows the site. So the tennis facility will be in this location. The proposed scope for the project is 10 full-size tennis courts. They'll be ITF, International Tennis Federation compliant, so hard court surface. There will be the inclusion of 2 hot shot courts, heating wall. The lights for the tennis courts will be all LED lighting. Then there will be a pavilion, parking, and then there's some other works will obviously provides connection from the Amaroo District playing field car parks up to this site and the car parking for the new facility. So that just provides a visual of the site configuration. So the 10 courts as detailed there, hot shot courts down here in the corner, hitting wall in this area here, central pavilion, and obviously car parking to service the facility. Here's just an aerial render image of the facility. So again, hot shot courts and the tennis wall there, central spine with the pavilion and the 10 main ITF compliant courts. This site, or this slide just gives you a bit of connection broader back to the district playing field. So access to the site comes through the existing district playing fields car park, and then there's a connection of a road through here and the engineering and a bridge to provide over this creek. And obviously traffic calming measures. So there's obviously some intersections here in terms of bike, equestrian paths and the like. So the design has factored all those elements in and providing a range of traffic calming measures. So we've had, as part of the engagement today, discussions with Pedal Power, ACT Equestrian, obviously the school, user groups of the district playing fields, in particular athletics, use these areas here for some of their throwing activities, so making sure that the design is sympathetic and meets the needs of all users moving forward. Just a bit of a quick view of the proposed scope for the pavilion stage 1. In essence, the next slide shows that this provides about 150 square metres of space, but importantly, Tennis ACT and Tennis Australia have some aspirations that they potentially would like to increase that in the future and may look at opportunities to see how that may be able to be funded, potentially through other co-contributions and the like. So the design that we're currently working through at an early stage will give consideration about how that could be readily expanded if additional funding was ever available, and then also obviously making sure that in the broader site that that expansion is allowed for to allow that to happen. Site constraints broadly, just to provide some information that we've had to consider, and some of these have been worked through already, we've worked through ecological and heritage considerations, and that's now complete and has been factored into the design. The site, in terms of the allocation of land that we're proposing for the facility, takes into consideration the road reserve and future duplication of Horse Park Drive. There's a major sewer that goes through the site, and we've taken the opportunity to use that as a bit of a corridor and landscape treatment. There's a couple of sewers that we would needed to deal with, and I'll show that on the next slide. Site topography and flooding has been considered, and what that means. So obviously making sure that the proposed building is above the 1 in 100. Site access, including bridge access, has been factored in. And then, as I mentioned already, the location of surrounding infrastructure and users of I guess the adjacent areas being the sports grounds, the bike trails, the Bicentennial Trail and the like. So that's just a bit of a visual. So that's a sewer easement that comes through the site. So obviously the tennis courts, and there's another easement through here under the car park. The major infrastructure being the tennis courts have been located again in consideration of the ITF requirements in terms of where their orientation, etc. There's some tolerances that need to be adhered to in terms of just off a true north position. So that allowed in terms of maximising the number of courts that we could provide. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, obviously consideration of other site constraints being the road reserve, the creek, etc. That's just a couple of recent photos of the rain. So that's just, I guess, providing some context in terms of what our consultants, Cardno, have been considering in terms of the design and the flooding requirements for the site. And this just provides a bit more information in terms of some of those site constraints that I mentioned. So this in terms of traffic calming, in terms of bike, etc. This area here is actually an area where for equestrian that a holding spot if necessary for horses, etc. And as I said, there'll be traffic calming along this road that comes through to provide access to the tennis facility site. As I mentioned before, we've had good engagement with the ACT Equestrian Association and other user groups in the near that access and utilise the facility regularly. Other site constraints that we're obviously working towards is obviously noise. Obviously the facility is in consideration of noise requirements, some screen tree planting, etc. has been factored into the design, and that will provide dual benefits in terms of provides separation, but also helps for tennis users to control and minimise wind, and so there's some natural screening proposed. Light spill, similar to all our sports grounds around the city. There's compliance requirements around the Australian standards, so we have to do detailed modelling to essentially control that the light comes from the LED systems, comparably to sports ground lights. These poles will be significantly shorter, and basically there's a requirement that the light spill is centred around obviously the court playing surface, and we've got detailed modelling that shows that dissipates very quickly once you get outside the perimeter of the tennis facility itself. So that's just another rendered image. In terms of the project schedule, we're working towards finalising documentation and seeking planning approval. So that'll be the first step will be a state development plan, DA, that we hope to be submitting, and then seeking approval later in the year. Then we need to commence I guess detailed design development again towards the back end of this year, with proposed construction to commence in 2023. So pleasingly, as you noted, Peter, the budget provided funding to support the delivery of the facility. So 9.4 million was allocated in the budget. That's on top of there was another $500,000 provided to commence the design process. Tennis ACT and Tennis Australia are also contributing to the project as well, to the tune of 400,000. So we essentially have a total project budget of about $10.3 million. In terms of, at the moment, the project's up on the ACT Government Your Say website. That engagement closes on the 19th of August. We've also sent out letterbox drop to nearby residents, and has also obviously been sharing it, and Tennis ACT has been sharing the information that's on the Your Say page with their participants and members as well. So we welcome that feedback. As I mentioned, that engagement will remain open till the 19th of August. So happy to understand what the views of the community have about the project, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing this being delivered.
Okay, sorry, David, I had myself muted. Thank you for that, David. Look, it's really pretty exciting. We're a bit short of a lot of facilities in Gungahlin, so to have the tennis centre coming along is tremendous. We've got a couple of questions on Facebook. Does the centre allow for future expansion for more courts? And are there any plans or possibilities for any of the courts to be covered with either a full proper roof or some sort of shade? Sorry, and then when it's be fully operational, I guess would be late 24 in terms of after construction. But yeah, so yes, future expansion, covering, and when will it actually be up and running?
Yep, so first question in terms of expansion on that site, no. We've essentially maximised the site and the land that's available with some of those constraints that I mentioned. There's obviously the road and a couple of creeks. So that essentially curtails obviously the limit of how many courts we can get in at this facility. So that's the first question. In terms of potential covering the courts, at this point in time, those considerations could be considered in the future, but that's I guess something that hasn't necessarily been considered in the first phase of what we're delivering. Look, I do know in terms of priority, that would be an area where if we were working with Tennis ACT about strategically where any covered courts would go, we would want to understand in respect of whether that's at their main centre in Lynham, etc. So that'd be one where we would defer and potentially work with Tennis ACT in terms of any additional covered courts. But at this point in time, yeah, they're meant to be just obviously all outdoor courts as shown. And the third question, sorry.
When will people be playing tennis on the tennis facility?
Yeah, so basically construction earmarked to commence next year. So we are aiming to have, subject to planning approvals and all those sorts of things, 2024.
2024. Yeah, I looked at just related to the question on expansion. And certainly, you know, the community councils work with Tennis ACT for a lot of years towards getting this project up, and their sizing suggests that a community as big as Gungahlin would need a lot more courts than is originally proposed. Has there been some sort of early thinking about, well, if we have to build another 8 or 10 courts in a few years' time, if they can't be on that site, where else in Gungahlin? Because it seems that in this case, and also World of Football, some of these sites being proposed for some of these facilities are suboptimal. Like, you know, obviously this one straddles a sewer easement, and you know, it's got some constraints around access and bridges and creeks, and that the Throsby Home Football site apparently has been delayed in part because more air engineering is needed to cope with the fact that it's a low-lying site with, you know, lots of water courses. You know, are there enough places and land in Gungahlin to fit in the sporting facilities that the district requires?
Yeah, look, we've got some, I guess, future sites that to support expansion on a number of facilities. So you mentioned the home of football in Frosby. So just quickly an update on that. The Estate Development Plan DA application is now live. So that was following some extensive work, and we've obviously did your say engagement community consultation. So that's now at a stage where it's formally on circulation. So that site obviously has, and the proposed delivery of that facility has future capability for expansion, and that's centred around football facilities. There's, and part of the SLA presentation around Jacka, off to the side of that is a district playing field site. So that assists in future growth of some sporting facilities in the future there. There's also additional capacity as part of the Taylor District playing fields for additional sports grounds there. The first of those fields was built as part of the school, but there's residual land for additional fields to be augmented at a later stage there. So that gives some sense of opportunities around that to provide some future growth in terms of tennis facilities, other indoor facilities, etc. We're working closely with the Education Directorate in terms of providing opportunities and planning for community facilities as part of the rollout and release of schools, whether that be indoor courts, additional indoor facilities. So yeah, the new schools that are being planned to design provide considerations for adding additional indoor courts to help the provision of indoor sporting uses as well.
Right, so that's in part informed by the recreation facilities and sporting assessment, because indoor sports is a red in that report. So I would hope that that's somewhere on the priority list.
Well, yes, and that's where there's been decisions already to provide additional indoor courts. So I guess historically, primary schools might only have one indoor court. The recently opened Throsby School has two. There's additional, obviously, facilities. So moving forwards, the starting of design and development, sport and recreation, we have discussions in terms of pushing for at high school the provision of two courts and things like that as part of assisting in providing those type of facilities to meet the needs of the community as Gungahlin continues to expand.
Okay, well, I think a lot of people sort of have in mind this sort of classic indoor sports facility for multi-sports and indoor cricket and netball and those sort of things, but I think that's well captured in the assessment, so that might be a future discussion is, the sport and recreation directorate response to that report might be a useful piece. But anyway, I don't see any other questions, so Dave, we might leave it with you. If there's nothing else, I haven't seen anything come by. Nope, no, I've got all the questions from Facebook. Thank you very much for coming along this evening, David, and our best regards to Nathan. I hope his COVID journey is a short one.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Cheers, Peter.
Nice. Thanks, Dave. Okay, our final session tonight is being presented by Elizabeth Judd from Judd Studio. Judd Studio presented on as the town planner for and architects for a number of developments in Gungahlin, but the piece of work they're working on now is something a little bit different. It's a feasibility study around the town centre. So without further ado, over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm just going to share my screen now. Hopefully you can see that. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm here with Rod Baxter as well, who's the project leader for this within EPSDD. Keen to give you an update today on where we're at with the work that we're doing on the new community facility. Since we met with you, hopefully I can, there we go. Since we met with you at the end of June, I think it was, we've had a number of meetings with a number of community service providers. We've also had the opportunity to visit a number of the other community centres within Canberra, which has been very interesting and really important to get a sense of what's working really well and what's not working so well. Based on those discussions, we've developed some preliminary project aspirations and principles that will feed into the functional design brief. And we've also started to put together some functional relationships, diagrams and thinking around that, which I'll share with you this evening. And that's also going to inform the draft brief, which we've already started preparing. In terms of the stakeholders that we've already met with, you can see there's a pretty significant cohort there. These are all a number of the community service providers within the Gungahlin region. They're not all of them, but it's provided us with a really great opportunity to talk to people who are working with the community on the ground and have a really good idea of what the community needs and what are the sort of spaces that could be useful for a wide range of people living within the Gungahlin region. We've also visited some of those community centres you can see there. So Lanyon, the Tuggeranong Community Centre, Common Ground and Communities at Work building in Gungahlin, as well as the Tuggeranong Arts Centre, PCYC and the Belconnen Community Centre. We've been very lucky to be able to be welcomed into those buildings to look at those. Based on that, we've been able to develop these this initial project vision. So I guess it's high level, but it's important to note what the community is looking for from the centre. So a place that belongs to and welcomes all members of the very diverse and growing Gungahlin region community, where all people feel respected and are free from prejudice or judgment, and a place that strengthens the community and enlivens the town centre. And you can see some words there that we keep hearing a lot now about what people are expecting the community centre to feel like, the sort of things that they want to do there. So in a place for sharing, for play, for healthy pursuits, embracing the multicultural community, there where there's belonging and that it's a friendly place as well. In addition to that, we have prepared these higher aspirational, I guess, needs for the centre, and this is then informing the more detailed functional requirements for the various parts within the centre. So what we're seeing is that the centre needs to foster connection and belonging so that people can feel part of their community, that it welcomes and celebrates the incredibly diverse cultural community that's within the Gungahlin region. We're realising that it's the most diverse cultural community within the ACT, and that's just a wonderful opportunity to bring everybody together within this centre, that it needs to reflect connection to country and also the culture of the First Nations people within Canberra, that it is welcoming and a safe space for everyone, regardless of their cultural background, ethnicity, gender, abilities, religion or age. That this is a real opportunity for it to be a disability-friendly building that's accessible to everyone. Very important that it's a place where young people feel safe and welcome, that it's a place for larger as well as small community gatherings and celebrations, place where people can really explore their the artistic direction that they'd like to take and support art groups as well. That there's a real opportunity for social enterprise and for group training, smaller community training and personal development lessons and courses to be run there. Very importantly, that it provides a base for the community sector within Gungahlin, and that is a really collaborative, cooperative community service sector at the moment. So a space for all of those groups to come together and have office space they can work from when they're providing outreach. And importantly, that it's a building that can change and be adaptable to the needs of the community as time progresses. What we're seeing is these buildings, they last for many decades, and as much as we can try to foresee how the needs might change, we need to try to build that into the community centre, and also provide spaces within it that could perform multiple functions as well. And ultimately that it's a space that the whole community feels proud of and wants to visit as well. Within that, when we think about the actual design requirements for it, there seems to be a general drive that this should be a special destination landmark building, that it should have a special architectural character, that it really should enliven the space around it and be quite a vibrant, active, activated place. Really important, particularly with regard to its accessibility, that's within easy walking distance to bus and light rail stops and to the town centre itself. And I guess the piggyback to that is that there's also convenient and affordable public car parking that's available very close to the centre, that it connects to its landscape and the outdoors, and that there's a really good sense of letting the outdoors in and the indoors out as part of it. That there's wonderful access to natural light within the centre, really great ventilation, and thinking about sustainability through the centre. That is a safe place to be, that it's accessible and inclusive, and that it's a resilient building. And then, as we mentioned before, that it reflects connection to country and the diverse cultural community within the region. So I mentioned before thinking about how all the spaces fit together. So there's a range of different spaces that have been identified as ideally being within the centre. And you can see in the top there that ideally there would be a cafe space, an exhibition gallery, a place for art workshops to be done, a youth hub, a permanent youth hub, rooms for public hire, for public meetings, and that would include smaller meeting rooms and quite large function spaces that can accommodate quite a number of people for a large gathering. That there would be smaller counselling or interview rooms, a shared work hub, community service administration area, laundry and shower facilities for people in the community to come and use if they don't have access to those at home, and that would be in particular for people who are sleeping rough. That there would be playground or play facilities within the building or in the garden, that there would be shaded barbecue area available and a space to accommodate outside events, that there would be some form of outside recreation, not outsider as it says there, outside recreation, and space for informal recreation as well, and potentially a community garden. And you can see there the range of different people that we're anticipating would be users of the centre, but effectively we've broken down every segment of the community. So we're anticipating that this would be a place that anybody would come to visit, no matter their age or gender or what sort of background they come from. In terms of how all these spaces fit together, that's part of the puzzle that we're putting together to work out how everything fits. So this is our initial thoughts about how some of these spaces might relate to each other. And I just wanted to share it with you so you can see some of the complexity of how all of these elements fit together. And that's important to note, because while we might want it to be everything that everybody wants, we can't always fit everything in. So we're trying to make sense of how all these pieces fit together to get a really functional and positive experience within the space, so that we can have as many uses as possible within the centre. So you can see there we're anticipating a foyer space that relates to an exhibition space, that there would be a gallery close to the front of the building, ideally, that also relates to the street, that there would be a separate but connected youth hub with its own separate entrance, and then a variety of community function spaces and the administrative areas. And when we break those down further, you can see here that the youth hub then has its drop-in space, some outdoor recreation areas, potentially another multi-purpose space, a kitchen within it, a quiet space, counselling rooms, and then connection to the outside. Similarly, the art space and community area would have a number of art workshop rooms, so a couple of wet rooms or messy rooms for painting and that sort of thing, and then potentially a dry or clean space that might be more suited to, say, knitting groups, sewing, paper crafts and things like that. Then there would be also ideally a very large multi-purpose space with a commercial kitchen, a dance studio or an indoor recreation type studio with appropriate flooring to accommodate that, and some of these meeting rooms that we talked about before. With regard to the consultation spaces, these would be to suit the outreach services that the community sector would be providing. And it's clear that these spaces are really important. So there would be a range of smaller meeting or counselling or interview rooms for people to have one-on-one conversations, as well as a larger group consulting room, and that ideally these would also relate to the outside, so that this is where this sense of really connecting to the outside landscape area becomes important. And then your more typical administrative space, sharing some of these staff and administrative amenities, and that these would connect also to potentially a public work hub. So people who are looking to work outside of their home, but they don't work in a formal office, might be able to rent space or occasionally use space within the community centre as well. In terms of the next steps, we're now looking to confirm the functional brief with the community sector stakeholders that we've already spoken to. So that's really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what each of those spaces need to include. And that will come down to, the specifics of all of those elements, entries, furniture, all of that sort of thing. We're also looking at the site evaluations, and I'll share some of the initial thinking about that with you this evening as well. We will be engaging with the new Gungahlin Community Panel. We're really excited to have the opportunity to work with the panel as they've just commenced, and ideally we'll be meeting with them before the end of August to start talking through the next steps of the program for this project. And once the functional design brief has been finalised and we have a decision on the site, then we'll then start to develop concept plans to demonstrate what the potential is for the new building, and we'll explore those with the community panel and with the broader community as well. And ultimately then that will feed into the project feasibility and the facility management to inform the budget, the business case and the budget for the building, proper building design, the formal building design and the construction itself. In terms of the site evaluation, obviously, this builds on the feedback that we're receiving about what the building needs to include. But the key elements, at least initially, that we're looking at are what land is actually available, what the area of that land is and what its zoned is, although the zoning can shift depending on where we land with that. Looking at the site area itself, what it relates to, what's around it, the proximity to public transport, as well as cycle and bicycle routes, and how it engages with the town centre. When we're thinking about the options for the new site, I guess the most obvious option is that there is a dedicated site and its sole purpose is to be the location for the new community centre. But there are also a couple of other options that we're at least also considering to make sure that we get the best outcome. One of those is that there's potential that the community centre could fit within a space that's leased by government within a broader site development by a private developer. And similarly, that it could fall within special lease conditions that require it to be delivered as a new community facility within a broader site redevelopment. And the other alternative is that it's seen as a subdivision of a larger commercial site, which would fit into sort of master planning for that smaller precinct. And I guess that goes a little to what Andrew was saying about the potential of some of these bigger commercial sites that may be subdivided in the future. So we're also considering that. We've done a quick overview of what some of the available sites are within the town centre that we can see at the moment. The pink dots you can see are the sites that potentially have the most opportunity, and the orange dots are the sites that are also available but may not be as appropriate. We've got an overlay here of some radius distances. So you can see this circle here demonstrates a radius of 200 metres, so that's useful to know for walking, and this one for 500 metres or half a kilometre. So these are both relatively comfortable walking distances if you're looking to visit the centre on foot, if you're getting off at the bus interchange, for example. These sites down here, you will know that this block is quite a large block here, block 1 of 232, which is a large car park at the moment. There's potential to subdivide this and have the community centre facing onto Gungahlin Place, and potentially also linking to a second building or a pavilion within block 1 of 38, which is actually on that central median within Gungahlin Place itself. Another option is to consider part of the car park located next to a new house there. And then there's also this community facility land zoned here in the northeast. That's immediately adjacent to the new proposed green space. So there's some really wonderful opportunities there for a building to relate to the open space next to it. Similarly, there is the site here, block number 11 of section 249. And also this site here, which we've got with a yellow dot at the moment within the green space. But this site is actually, I guess, a future urban area. So there's potential to look at a variation to use part of that site adjacent to the green linear park for the new centre to be located there as well. So these are some of the options we're considering, but really welcome any initial feedback that you might have, noting that this is definitely not the only opportunity that you'll have to comment on any of the information that I've provided this evening, or to talk about the sites as well. As I said, we'll be going to the community panel, but also coming out and speaking to the community more generally, as well as we continue to develop the project. So I'm happy to take questions now, if you like, Peter, or to provide any other information, or Rod, if there's anything else you wanted to provide.
No, nothing from me at this stage. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think just welcome any questions and any early views people might have about the site options.
Well, just in terms of the site options, I think it's important you go and have a chat to the Transport Canberra people. They've got some very significant concerns about how the bus interchange is working or not. And they certainly have some of those locations identified there as layover sites for their buses. So that's obviously all work in progress.
Yeah.
And it's probably also worth touching base with the TCCS active travel feasibility study, although they're nearly finished now. So that's one thing. I guess, Elizabeth, from the consultation list of the list of stakeholders you've engaged, I just noticed that you don't seem to have any faith groups there, none of the churches no. At all. And, it just seems to me that in a very diverse community, we have, unsurprisingly, a fairly diverse collection of faith groups. And if anyone has a good connection to community, it would be them. Yeah. Are they deliberately excluded, or used?
No one's been deliberately excluded. It's just really come down to, I guess, a question of time so far. So we've reached out to a number of groups that are providing direct community services at the moment, and particularly groups we see that might actually occupy some of the outreach within the centre in the first instance. But there's definitely the intention to reach out more broadly to the community and the faith groups in particular. I should also mention that we have also reached out to the United Ngunnawal Elders Council. And also we are going to be speaking with Woononga Aboriginal Health and Community Services as well. So we haven't, we've by no means finished our consultation, but it's just the first tranche to inform this the first part of the work. But we have spoken with the Multicultural Hub, and we're aware that there are a number of groups that we'd really welcome having conversations with now as part of the next phase of the engagement.
So you will be going out to faith groups? I mean, I personally have no specific faith group I'm attached to, but it just seems odd that in a diverse community, a lot of whom have their own faith groups or multiple faith groups, it would be odd not to engage them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be really worthwhile to speak with them, and it's our intention to do that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the intention is to publish this brief that you're working and developing.
Yes. I think that's what we'd like to do. At the moment, we'd like to finalise the draft of where it's at, and then we'd like to publish it. But there's also an opportunity for us to engage through the community panel as well to test some of the aspirations within it too. So we'd like to do that as well. But
I think it's great.
Publish it.
Yeah. I certainly in my head that and you do capture this in the set of criteria as access to green space and, you know, connecting to the linear park does seem like a really good idea, but, you know, noting that you don't have infinite freedom with the various sites you're looking at there. So,
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? Nothing on Facebook that I can see. Watching land and nope, nothing else there. All right. Oh yes, Kevin.
Look, I'm a little bit confused with something that Andrew said on the block at 249. I thought there was something, he said that was for community services. What's the connection?
It's actually community use, Kevin. And I'm not sure. Andrew's still on here. Andrew, can you speak to that?
Okay, I'm happy to talk to that one quickly. So that's just talking to the zoning, and there's quite a broad amount of sites left in the town centre that have an intention for community facility zoning. As Elizabeth talked to earlier there, it hasn't been what we call uplifted yet, so the zoning hasn't been locked in. But if we were to move a community facility site, you'd have to offset it somewhere else. So there's a lot of sites left that have community facility zoning that then has a broad spectrum of what you could have as permissible uses on those sites. Probably also worth talking quickly there too, that the SLA team will be working quite closely with Rod and Elizabeth through that area. As you could probably anticipate, the site selection of that community site will be quite important to finalising our place and design frameworks. It'll be iterative in nature, so there was talk about possible interactions into the linear park, reshaping the linear park, so we'll be working quite closely with them to make sure that that's a fully integrated, and the feedback loop between both of those projects is very clear.
Yeah, look, it looks really good what you're doing, by the way. Congratulations on the work so far. While I've got you here, Andrew, there's a very large vacant block of land near the towers and behind the fire station that's been vacant for about 10 years. When you're making your request as to what's happened to that other block, maybe you might like to ask a question. What's happening with that one? I mean, how much longer can they sit on it?
Yeah, we'll definitely commit to do that. So I do, from recollection, note that I think that developer might have put a submission to the DB364 process, just reflecting on that the nature of that particular part of the town centre had changed. So they may have been waiting to see what the outcome of DB364 was, because that has quite a big impact on the development outcome. But I'll commit to get you a response back on those two blocks.
Yes, I read that submission. It was a very unsurprisingly, very self-interested one, because DV364 was seeking to introduce, as it were, retrospective height limits, which were less than the current buildings on the sites. And because he's been slow, or chosen to be slow to move, it would mean that he would end up having a building that was smaller than all the ones around him, which would make no sense at all. Yeah, look, it does seem very odd that developers can acquire these sites and hold on to them for years and years and years. So it'd be very good. It would be very good to get an update on what the government's position on that is.
Sure, we will facilitate that response back.
Thank you, Andrew. Much appreciated. All right, it's getting close to time. So if there's nothing else, Elizabeth, this is a great process. You know, it echoes Kevin's comments. It's good to see a level of detail here. I just, you know, on something that's community based, and I've mentioned this to anyone who's listened for the last year or two. You know, if you're going to go and try and do something for the community, then you do need to go to the stakeholders that are engaged with the community. And I know that's a long list, but if you're going to get a good picture, you need to engage a lot of folk. And hopefully the community panel will capture a lot of that, and we'll see that come through. So thank you, Elizabeth, for your update, and for Rod to representing the Planning Directorate on that particular project. It would be good at some stage to get an indication of broadly what time frame you're working with, but let's leave that for perhaps the next update.
Sure. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having us tonight as well.
Thank you.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of the evening. I've lost track of what time it is. Find that somewhere, but my watch has gone flat. It's just about 10 past 8. Thank you for those that have stayed to the end. I do appreciate it. Of course, the recording is online, so there's been a lot of really good stuff tonight. So I think I'll make a point of encouraging people to check the recording. Thank you all. We'll see you next month. I think it's been a really great update, and there's quite a lot to report on and quite a lot coming. So again, thank you for your contributions this evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.